Ooh. Oh, I probably should get mine ready to go. Ah, yeah,
Well, at
hang on.
least we're live on our channel.
Oh, we are? Okay.
So people get to listen to us setting up the other channel.
It won't take that long.
Yeah.
Welcome to
Um,
Kingdom of Honor. I'm your host, Zanman Shane Sabuni, along with my good buddy, the Honorable Jeff.
hello.
And we're here talking about the week of wrestling that was, and there really wasn't much going on this past week in wrestling as far as actually on the on the air. But we did see who I consider the most boring guy in wrestling finally lose his cruiserweight championship. So that
Yeah,
made me pretty happy.
it's weird that they, y- and that was one of the few things that was going on that I kind of wanted to discuss. It's weird that they consistently have to push for the next um, m- Latino superstar when every
Mhm.
single one of the ones that they pick, like there's so many brilliant Mexican wrestlers. Like you look at Ray Phoenix for starters, and Ray Phoenix is the top of the food chain, but there are so many guys that are so much better in that upper echelon like Ray Phoenix. How is it that the WWE always finds the most absolute boring Latino wrestler they can find and they push them to the moon? I mean, Alberto Del Rio is kind of the one that you point at the most, but then Escobar is like Alberto Del Rio light. There's
Yeah.
nothing likable about the guy. He's not as flashy as a luchador should be, even though he tries to play up that luchador tradition and everything. He has he has a charisma of a rock.
Yeah.
I'm there's nothing about him that I like. And to be fair, who they put the belt on, way overdue. Way overdue to run with a championship.
He is. Yeah. I mean, Kushida is, one of the greatest. I'm not gonna say the greatest because Yoshinado Liger exists, but
Yeah,
one
and
of
so
the
does Will Ospreay.
yeah one of the greatest junior heavyweights in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Right.
Um, and it was and but he kind of ran that with that division the way that the Liger did back in the 90s
Yep.
and early 2000s. So it was it's but he wanted a new adventure. He wanted to come to the United States and try his hand at something bigger, I guess,
He pulled a
because they
Shinsuke.
were. Yep, he did, and now he's challenged for the North American Championship against Johnny Gargano in a fantastic match earlier this year, and now he's finally won the Cruiserweight Championship from Santos Escobar.
And I know I mentioned that Ciampa Walter match was one of my favorites this year, but that
Hmm.
Gargano Kushida match probably, well, I don't know, it might have just been usurped by Osprey and Kota. But that Gargano Kushida match was just flat out amazing. And it's right now it's kind of a toss up between that and Osprey versus Kota as to my two matches of the year.
Yeah, my four favorite matches so far this year are Osprey versus Kota, Kushida versus Gargano, Ray
Kota,
Phoenix versus Kenny Omega, and Shingo versus Jeff Cobb from Wrestle Kingdom.
yeah, and you can't look past that Kota versus Jay White match either.
Yeah,
It,
that was really good. But I had some minor problems with that one, so that one would probably be fifth on my list
I mean that
this year.
it's I, I'm not a Coda fan, never have been. I really dislike that, and I'm glad he's not doing it anymore. That dark Coda that he
Hmm.
was doing, I could not stand that because it never led anywhere. It was kind of like when John Cena pulled out the springboard stunner. Great move, flashy, but the Stone Cold Stunner is one of the most iconic moves of all time. To the point where now Kevin Owens has adopted that, and that's his new move. He's gotten rid of the pop-up power bomb. It's now, the stunner. Um, the fact that Cena never once got a pin out of that was really, really kind of disheartening. And I feel like the Dark Coda is a lot of the same. Like if you're going to have this storyline with the Dark Coda and how he goes to this, the fact that he never got a win out of it, um, really, really disappointed me.
Yeah, I know. We talked about that before.
Right.
Um,
And I know that, it was kind of a slow week in wrestling, but I
Yeah, it was kind of slow week in wrestling. There really was nothing.
I mean, more inner circle, pinnacle, pineapple, whatever you want to call him. And I love the fact that Jericho's still doing that pineapple gimmick in his interview, and then having to have one of his other guys whisper in his ear. Oh, I mean, pinnacle. That's the Jericho that I like to see. But you know, the other thing of note that I mean, we discussed it a little bit last week about how I wish Scarlett Johansson was just pretty. This witch Scarlet is not my cup of tea. But I was looking at oh, did I lose you? Oh, looks like we lost Shane. She should be back on, I'm hoping soon. Try and give him a call back. Riveting radio, guys, I understand. But uh, as I was saying, and just while I'm trying to get a hold of Shane again, I'm not a big fan of Karrion Cross's entrance. I don't feel like the fall and pray and all that stuff and the Witch Scarlet really fits him, even though his character is really, really well done. It's just, it's kind of frustrating to me that that's what they're, rolling with. And I'm not sure where Shane is. It looks like he's out, so he'll call me as soon as he can. But yeah, I mean that's one thing that kind of bugs me a little bit. Hey Arlo, that's one thing that kind of bugs me a little bit about that. And looks like we got Shane back here, so I'll be able to discuss that in a little further detail now that we have Shane back on. Um, just dropped you there, huh?
Yeah, somehow my internet flashed off and I lost my OBS and I lost you. So
Oh, well, I was kind of continuing just talking. What I was saying when I lost you is the Karrion Cross character I like. I like that his in his interview he's still that badass douchebag, but he played up to the crowd on NXT this week. He talked about how they're fired up. He let them do the fall and pray chant. When they started chanting later on after he did the whole hungriest people on the planet are in NXT thing, he kind of held the mic out. So I love his character and I love the way he's able to incorporate being a good guy while still being this just badass. What I don't like about it is I don't think I mean, we talked about this last week. I'm not a fan of the Scarlet Witch thing. Um, the whole witch Scarlet. I guess I shouldn't say Scarlet Witch. I think that's copyrighted. Um,
a little bit.
but the whole witch version of Scarlet, I think she should just be a pretty valet and not be this whatever she is. And I also really don't think his music fits him. Like I watch his entrance and I hear that slow witchy tone and then the fall and pray and all this stuff and I was watching it and I literally was just watching it again right before the show because I wanted to check out a few things about Peacock. And I just don't feel like that music fits him. It's not a theme like with
Leave it.
when you've got a total badass like you do with Karrion Cross. It's not the music gets me kind of the opposite feeling of the way I should feel when this guy's music hits.
Um, I don't think. I mean, I guess yeah, you're right. I mean, the current character doesn't really fit the music or the tone that his um that Scarlet does.
Right.
It really is a disjointed thing where um yeah, I mean he doesn't come across as spooky. He's like the badass. I do think when he started, and again, I really wasn't watching NXT at the time, but I kind of got the impression that he was kind of like this supposed to be like the spooky like Doomsbringer character, and yeah, I mean he still does still does the Doomsday stuff. He does still does the TikTok stuff, but um he really doesn't. It really does not feel like um he's like a sinister. Well, it
Hey,
doesn't feel like he's he's a mystic type character, I
no,
guess.
he's a total badass, and I was saying, and I don't know if I you had heard this part or not, but I really really like the way that he plays to the crowd while still maintaining a total badass character. Like when he came out and he was doing his interview and he was talking about and he was just talking, and they started doing the fall and pray chant and he paused for a minute. He goes, "You guys are really fired up," and then he kind of throws his head back, where it was almost like it. came across kind of halfway as an annoyance to him that the
Hmm.
crowd was chanting, but at the same time, he was giving the crowd the time to chant. Um, so it was and then a little bit later on, after he said the thing about how the hungriest wrestlers on the planet are in this brand, and the crowd started chanting again, and he held the mic out to play to them. Um,
Right.
but he does that in a way where he still comes across. He's not like he's crowd pandering. He's really brilliant with it because he comes across like a complete badass, but he's letting the crowd be the crowd. It was kind of a refreshing thing to watch because I you don't normally see that when people start doing little gimmicks like you're really fired up this week. It's them playing to the crowd pandering, and that I didn't get that feeling out of him.
No, it did feel like a little bit bizarre to me though. I mean, I'm really not sure that I like the idea of him being a crowd favorite, but you know,
I
I guess
do
it is.
because
I guess it is what it is.
I like it because in this day and age, it's not like it was back in the 80s and 90s when the crowd cheered for the faces and there were the rare people like you and me who Savage and Flair were my favorites because and they were total assholes. But they were always my favorites. Now it's become more of a in today's day and age, people just respect the guy more than they follow the normal trope of I've got to cheer for him because he's a face and I got to boo him because he's a bad guy.
I know that, but then that also leads to those stupid dueling chants or those both these guys chants that just are just ridiculous and take me out of matches. You
Yeah,
know.
and as long as they don't get back into the standing in the middle of the ring and every single thing, trading punches while the crowd goes ooh ah, yeah, I don't want to ever
Or
see
no,
that
the
again.
or yay and boo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the yay and boo. I just don't want to. I'm so glad that we're not doing that again because I think like 2015, 2016, you couldn't watch a match without that happening.
No, you couldn't. Even 2019.
Yeah, and now, I mean, now, granted, we kind of are a little bit on the suicide dive in every single match, or tope con hilo, or whatever that. No, tope suicida.
Yeah.
That's got to be in every match. And now the I don't know how many times we've got to see the hardest part of the ring being used, but
Yeah. Which is which.
at least they're not standing in the middle of the ring going yay boo anymore.
Yeah, I guess there's that. Um, let's see. And you said you want to talk about MSK a little bit from NXT too, right?
Yeah, I the thing about MSK, and I don't know if it's just something that I picked up on, but I don't feel like the crowd is buying into them as much as they should. Like, I mean, they've come in and they've been a big deal, and we know them as the Rascals, and they were a big deal in Impact, and they came in as a big deal, and won the Dusty Cup in their first, really their first exposure to the WWE audience, and then they came out and we're starting kind of a series with Imperium, but Imperium and or not Imperium, Lorcan and Birch, but Lorcan and Birch got injured, uh, so they had to pivot, and they ended up winning the titles and everything. And I just felt like on this episode, their match against Killian Dane and Drake Maverick, that they were jeered a little bit more than I would have expected them to be. I kind of got the Roman Reigns feel, like the crowd's just not accepting them as top baby faces.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like I said. I don't really pay attention to the crowd, and this is just one week too because we've seen them pretty hot. The crowd pretty hot for them before too.
Yeah, and that's it, but it was weird because I mean, you get that with like, especially Roman Reigns is a perfect example, and John Cena before him, he wasn't universally hated. There were some cities that they hated him more in. Um, I think it stuck out to me because they're still in the Performance Center.
That's true.
And
They
it's
are.
really the only time and first time in a year that we've really had live fans. So I wonder how much of that cheering for them was pumped in, and now that we have a live crowd, we're realizing that we're getting to back to a live crowd, and now we're going to realize that the crowd's just not accepting them.
It's possible. I don't know why why they wouldn't though. I mean they're citing high flying guys. They're the kind of guys the crowds usually do warm to.
The only thing I could think of is the whole storyline about his dad. and they really played that sympathy card to a nauseating point. It's kind of a cool little backstory to him, and it's okay, great, he's doing this because of this and this and this, but they really played it to a nauseating point. And that's the only reason I can think that the crowd is kind of turning on MSK because it came across like they were forcing sympathy for these guys.
No, I guess I did. I guess I didn't notice that, but I tend to be where things with my favorites are involved too.
Well, yeah,
So.
and it's sad because these guys, they're exciting. They're, fun to watch. Like we talked about it when they first came over. These were the two other Rascals that were the top two. Like when you and I talked about them, we kept saying, why are these guys in a tag team? They should be. I mean, and of course, one of them was, off on his own for a while, but then they decided that is it Dez who they decided to make the single star, and then they put these two into a tag team. And once they put these two into a tag team, lights out one of the best tag teams on Impact, and then they come to WWE, and I'm all excited for it because these two were the two that both you and I agreed were going to be the breakout stars.
No, the two here are Wentz and Dez. Trey Miguel was the one that's off on his own.
Okay, Trey's the one yeah, and it was because I was a big Dez fan, and you kept telling me that to keep an eye on Wentz, and and then they switched. They took Dez out of the singles action, threw him with Wentz, and once they did that, I started really noticing Wentz and noticing how Trey was easily, or yeah, Trey. It was the weak link of the three. So it didn't surprise me when WWE called and took, Wentz and Dez and left Trey in Impact.
No, I mean, and Dez, Dez is so like phenomenally, talented
Oh
in
yeah.
all aspects. I mean, I could really see like, I mean, and I think these guys really do enjoy being a tag team. So maybe they're never going to split, but um, I, I do think that both guys, could be stellar singles wrestlers as
Well,
well.
yeah, and I mean, they're phenomenal together. It's very rarely that you see, because there's always been that tag team dynamic where you've got the technical guy, the speedster guy, and then the powerhouse guy. And this, you've got two technical speedsters that are high flying. It's not like that typical um, tag team trope that has become the tag team trope over the last 30 years.
No, I don't know.
I don't know. I really, I enjoy them and I'm happy for them. And I hope that the crowd, hoping that this was kind of a one-off thing and it doesn't lead to more of them because I think this is a team that should be cheered and should be accepted by the crowd and should be fan favorites for a very, very long time. As far as the rest of the week in wrestling, really not much. It was really kind of
No,
disappointing, to be honest,
yeah,
for post
yeah.
WrestleMania week.
I did like the tag team match between Death Triangle and the Young Bucks. I just hated the ending of it. That's the second time they've done that same ending in on Dynamite with the Ray Phoenix match,
Right,
and it's just really stupid. I mean, they really should have the same rules as other promotions do, where pulling a mask off like that is an automatic disqualification.
right.
And the Bucks to do that. I understand they were trying to like sell the Bucks as being monster heels now, but I mean, really, if the best wrestler on the planet can be beaten just by pulling his mask off, then I mean, that to me is a really stupid kryptonite for somebody.
Well, they kind of use it as the whole traditional "you can't see my face ever" type of thing, and it's more of a pride thing. But
I do realize that, but I'm just saying that
yeah,
I mean, I think
it's
it's a really
stupid.
big cop out for having the best, who I consider to be the best wrestler on the planet, to
Who
be
I
beat.
think most people
So
consider, and it was fun to see probably the four best athletes in the world in the ring at one time.
yeah.
Because I mean, the only person that I could possibly see as a better athlete than Phoenix is Pac. And Nick is right there with him. Uh, it was a lot of fun to watch that match. And the the issue that I had with it too is we've been establishing the Bucks as heels since they faced off against Omega and Page for the titles.
Not really. I mean, there's been plenty of weeks where they played the babyface role since then.
Right, but they've also been the majority of the time they've been kind of that heel team. So it's, I mean, their treatment of Paige, the way that they, even after Paige and Omega broke up, the way that they kind of, and the only reason that they've really been baby faces because they've been, um, I don't know, at odds with Kenny.
Well, they've been at odds with Kenny, but they've also they are also like it have been it's been the guys that they faced. Some of them, a lot of them have been heels, and then also that they've been like quote unquote giving a chance to the younger guys.
True,
So
true. I, and it
kind of
was,
kind of in the way that Cody was still quote unquote kind of a baby face when he was doing his open challenge thing.
even
You
though
know.
he's straight up a dick. Actually, he hasn't been that dick lately, so um, he hasn't been that, heel that he was the first couple years in the promotion lately. I did like the Anthony Ogogo match. Um, I like that they're giving this Nightmare Factory and QT Marshall something to do after, their whole reveal.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed that. Another thing that I noticed is I'm so used to them coming in with that hot match to start the show. To have two back-to-back interview segments to start the show was a little offsetting.
It was. It was. I totally agree with you. I forgot about that till you mentioned it. But yeah, I was watching. I'm like, this isn't how they start Dynamite.
No, no. I mean, and then another thing I want to kind of throw out, and it's something I've said before, I love the fact that they put pay-per-view quality matches on their TV show. Granted, it makes me not really care too much about the pay-per-views because I've already seen a pay-per-view pretty much every week. Um, the part I hate about them doing that though, is they don't let storylines breathe. Like they've got their few that are kind of ongoing, but for the most part, like this Matt versus Darby, it was a great match. It was a fun match. It was a
I have
pay-per-view.
I have no idea. I tried to watch it 3 times, and every time my app crapped out on me at the same spot. So
Yeah, I mean, it was a pay-per-view quality match, but I felt like that story needed to breathe more than a couple of weeks.
I didn't know there was a story. So
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, the story I mean, they had it where it was kind of him just coming out and getting involved, and and then okay, he gets involved. You've got this big money Matt
oh,
character
because of
that,
the Dark Order thing. That's right.
yeah,
Okay, now I
you've
know
got
what you're
this.
talking about.
You've got this big money Matt character that you're really trying to develop and change, and I kind of like this new Matt character. I think the broken character was getting a little worn out. Um, so I'm glad that he was able to reinvent himself again. Uh, and I like seeing where this is going with it, but it really they did not give this feud with Darby time to breathe.
No,
And
and
that's the one complaint I really have about AEW wrestling is yes, I love the fact they give us great matches and pay-per-view quality matches every single week, but they need to let storylines breathe a little bit, not rush them into a 2 week story.
I I also had like a real problem with Jericho
Guys, guys,
Taking on Dax this week on the show, just because I don't like that Dax is using these spots where he's in a singles match and he basically feel like he has no chance. I mean, if Dax is going to be in there against Jericho, there should have been some kind of a way for him to cheat to win, in my opinion.
I mean if they were
And then also and Tyson's involvement is like a whole other thing that you already know that I can't stand.
right,
So
but holy shit, did Cash Wheeler take a punch? Oh my
he
God.
he he did, and that's my other problem with the match is that D- Dash is getting up on the apron, and granted he's got a chair too,
Right.
but he's getting up on the apron, and Tyson pulls him down and punches him. Um, but Sammy gets up on the apron to distract Dax,
And he
and
didn't,
there's no consequence to that.
even though he was playing down the middle and not, even though he's a member of the inner circle now, he's not going to play favorites and all this stuff. Yeah, I did
Right.
notice that too. But man, I still don't know if that was a true punch and he legitimately knocked him out, or if that was if he's just that great of a seller. Because I that that looked like a hard Mike Tyson knockout punch from the 80s.
Yeah, it did.
And
Um,
and he took it, and the way that Cash Wheeler sold that, I was just I literally was to this I've seen it now a couple different times, and every time I see it I'm like, holy crap, did he really knock his ass out?
Yeah, I see what you're saying because he did look like he was floored there.
And
Um,
well, and then even being carried out afterwards by Wardlow, on Wardlow's shoulders because he was still knocked out. It just either he's the best seller on the planet, or he really got knocked the fuck out.
the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about this week, just briefly, because I know that we're doing a short show this week, and I'm kind of running low on time with my usual Sunday plans. But
Oh, sorry.
no, you're no nothing to be sorry about. I just want to say that, and this is just going to tie in what happened with WWE this week on the 15th for the second year in a row. I was thinking about how, like you mentioned last week, like when did Adam Page become the number one contender in the company, right?
Right.
And there's no like really storyline pointing to that. They kind of like they briefly like tried to get like Adam to talk about Kenny this week, and he told me like, yeah, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, John's progressing nicely with his shoulder,
And we're going to
you
get
know.
chimichangas or whatever the hell they were getting.
Yeah, exactly. And but I looked at that and I was like, you know, Adam Page, even though he's like the number one contender right now, and he's number one in the rankings, he really has like no storyline towards Kenny, and he really doesn't even feel like a legitimate number one contender
Well, like
or a
his
legitimate contender at all.
right.
And so and I think what he really needs is a feud against somebody like Samoa Joe, like a feud where he gets like beat down by a big guy, and he's got to fight back, and he gets that triumphant win in order to the crowd like really behind him, in my opinion. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. And I don't know if Samoa Joe's got a 90-day contract or a 90-day waiting period. He has to. I assume that he does. But if he doesn't, I think Samoa Joe coming in there and having a feud against Adam Page would be fantastic for Page's career.
I agree.
You know,
And I'm glad you brought up Samoa Joe, and we'll talk about that in a second here. But um, the thing
if
about
not, then it needs to be somebody like Brian Cage, or it
or
needs to be, um,
or Lance Archer or
Lance Archer was the other guy I was thinking. I mean, Wardlow theoretically, but Wardlow also doesn't really have the name in his career yet either.
yeah.
So
But the thing about Paige, and I mentioned this last week when we brought up the whole number one contender thing, is I still have not felt the animosity between these two. And I was thinking about it a little bit more. There's no reason for the animosity. Yes, Kenny's a heel now, but Kenny didn't turn heel on Adam. They just kind of both went their separate ways. So in a way, I get it, but at the same point, if you're building towards a Kenny versus Adam storyline, you need to somehow bring up some animosity between the two.
yeah, you do. And and
Not
I
just,
and I,
hey, they were tag team partners at one time.
and maybe the animosity is going to be you're not even on my level page because it'd be hard to argue at this point.
Well,
It'd be hard to argue at this point that Page really deserves a shot at Kenny's title.
but it would be the same storyline that the Bucks ran with. If you really want to get that animosity, do the same storyline that the Bucks ran with, where they were calling him a jobber and things
Yeah,
like that. And then get Paige really, really this hatred blood feud for him versus Kenny, and then put Paige over and throw the championship on him. That would
right.
make that would pay off the B plus story player that Daniel Bryan did, that storyline, um, and it would cement Page as the future of AEW because he truly is. I mean, he's going to be him, MJF, Darby Allin, Ray Phoenix. These guys are going to be the future of AEW.
I completely agree. But the problem with that to me is that he's the top contender right now, and the next pay per view is in about a month from now with Double or Nothing. If they're going to do the storyline like that, it really needs to breathe until All Out.
Right. I mean, I don't, and that's getting back to my earlier point. That's my one negative about AEW is they are not letting storylines breathe. They have a couple that they've got kind of on the back burner, little teases here and there, like the MJF, Pineapple Pinnacle versus Inner Circle stuff, um, that they kind of, flesh out for way too long. And then they have other storylines that they really kind of rush into. Like that one, it was a couple months ago when Kenny had um, his world title match on free TV, which is great. I love it. But that story there, and I can't even remember who it was against at this point, and probably the reason I can't remember is because it was really a 2 week story.
Matt Sydal.
No, it wasn't Matt Sydal. It was somebody else. It was a while back, like right
Okay,
after he won the title.
okay.
They had some number one contendership thing happening on the pay-per-view, and then 2 weeks later it was a world title match.
Oh, it was Ray Phoenix you're talking about.
Yeah. You're right. It was. But it's just like I really wish, and it's sad because these are the types of stories that should be resonating, and I should be remembering. But 6 months later, I couldn't even remember it
Right.
because it was rushed. It was 2 weeks in, and we're all of a sudden okay. Now there's the payoff. It's the same thing with this Darby Allin Matt Hardy thing. It they started a storyline between these two 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, and now they had their big payoff Falls Count Anywhere match. It's like you got to let these stories breathe.
Yeah, 'cause that's their two problems that to me are like either they rush the stories or maybe the story takes a long time to get there, but there's like weeks where they're not mentioning it or where you just like totally forget something's going on. I could easily see Eddie Kingston being the top contender for or being the challenger for Kenny at Double or Nothing. At the
Right.
same time, you kind of forget sometimes that he's involved in this feud.
Yeah, you forget that he's even in the company anymore, especially now that Butcher and Blade are part of the Matt Hardy office.
Right.
Um, and then like I said, I'm glad you brought up Samoa Joe because that was one thing I really wanted to talk about. I know you're pressed for time, and we did go long on the first show, but um, it, how clueless is WWE? The backlash that they got last year for their mass firing on April 15th. Exactly 1 year later to the day, they celebrated that backlash by mass firing another bunch of people.
Yeah, I don't think they care.
But it's um uh uh former Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona, had a cool tweet that he said, WWE 415, I just fired your ass. It made me laugh really hard because that was a real because he was part of that last year's firing,
Right.
massive firing,
Right.
and the names of these people that they let go. Okay, if Joe's got some concussion issues and stuff like that, I kind of get it. Chelsea Green is one of the best up and coming people out there. She's got some injury concerns. I get it. But if you cannot make a star out of Chelsea Green, you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. I think I texted that to you last week too.
Yeah,
So
I mean, why not
yeah.
do a Britt
And,
Baker?
and,
Britt Baker was hurt, and she delivered some of the greatest promos she's ever had and made herself a star.
and who cares if Joe has concussion issues? He's a great commentator too for them. I mean, I mean he made some of the recent pay per view commentary
Watchable.
listenable for them. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. It just those two out of all of them. I mean, there was some others, and we talked. Remember, we talked a couple months ago about Bo Dallas, how we didn't even realize he was still employed with the company because he hasn't been on TV in over 3 years, 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
He was one of the guys that was let go. And then of course the Iconics were let go, which is another thing that really kind of bugged me because no, I don't think they're great wrestlers, but when they were a tag team, they had a great feel about them. They had this just really good aura that they never should have broke them up.
They never should have brought him up from NXT.
Well, that too. Um, it's that's just another one. If you can't keep Peyton Royce and Billy Kay together and create stars, then you just don't know what you're doing.
Um. And I just want to point out that I called Tucker. Remember, I called Tucker. I said when they moved to
Oh
the
yeah,
main roster, I said Otis is going to be the big star. Tucker's going to be gone within 2 years.
and that's another one that annoys me because Tucker was the talented one. Otis is just a comedy guy.
But he's the WWE guy out of the two.
Right,
You know.
exactly. And he tweeted too. I can't remember what his tweet was, but it was like the freedom from Mel Gibson from Braveheart. That was his
Oh,
tweet,
okay.
freedom or something like that.
That's
And
funny.
and he's I mean he's incredibly talented, but like you said, he's not the comedy WWE guy.
No, not at all.
So he's a guy that I'm excited to see what he can do in the future. Um, any of these guys you think end up in AEW? I could see
Um,
Chelsea Green.
I can see both Chelsea Green and Samoa Joe ending up there. I think that Mickey James is going to be ending up back in Impact personally.
or back in NWA with her husband,
Mickey James, who's Mickey James' husband again?
Nick Aldis.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. She could be in the NWA. But she's also like a veteran of Impact, so I wouldn't be surprised if she shows back up there.
Yeah, true.
Um,
And their
yeah,
women's division definitely needs the help in Impact now that Taya is a member of the NXT. What a horrible debut for her.
yeah, it really was. And I mean, I hope it goes somewhere after this, but because I mean, she really is one of the most talented women in pro wrestling, and one of those gorgeous women in pro wrestling, and to have her come in and do that kind of weird like French gimmick was just.
Hmm.
And I realize that she's Canadian, so it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, I mean, she. I'm so used to her being out there coming out and speaking Spanish for her to start talking French. I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I want out of this storyline is I want what is he what's his name now? John
uh,
Morrison. I
John
want
Morrison.
him to break away from the Miz because he is being wasted in that little tag team. Break away from the Miz, go to NXT, form a little like the Way stable, like Johnny and his wife have, Candice LeRae. Form that with Taya or whatever the hell they're calling her now, and just let him shine on his own and let him shine with her. And I think their stuff that they did together in Impact was phenomenal.
Well, I kind of agree with that, except for I do think we have to acknowledge that the way is, like Johnny said, the greatest four-person intergender stable in the history of pro wrestling.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I, I'm really not going to disagree with that.
So it's funny specific.
He, uh, this is why I love Johnny Gargano right now because his character is just amazing. He has taken this heel character, which is I said it last week, I said it a year ago. He needed to turn heel, but he needed to not be the badass heel. He needs to be this comedy, arrogant heel that he is now. And when I heard that line, that's the first thing I did is like, that's fucking Johnny. Bravo, bravo, I love it. That's what I want out of
Yeah,
Johnny
me
Gargano.
too. I didn't think about it. I didn't think of the line again until you mentioned that. But yeah, that was really funny. So all right. I think it's pretty much it for this week then, right?
Yeah, I don't really have much more. I mean, like I said, it was a slow week.
Yeah, I do know that the 500th episode of ROH is coming up very shortly,
Oh
so we should
wow,
probably and I think there's a big like maybe Jay Briscoe versus Roosh for that in that one or something. So
that could be fun.
um
So
yeah,
yeah,
so
well,
yeah, I think we need to get it caught up in ROH again and watch and cover that
I need
show.
to start watching some Ring of Honor TV. I guess there was an advertisement about it. I guess they're shown on Monday nights on TV. But I mean, we've got the app, so it doesn't matter. I can watch them whenever. But um, supposedly they're shown on. And what the hell ever happened to Impact? Are they just like I haven't heard anything about Impact in months.
Well, they moved to Thursdays now, right?
That I heard they were moving to Thursdays, which
And
uh,
and isn't Rebellion coming up like this coming weekend or something?
maybe I don't know.
The
But
one that's the one where Kenny's facing off against Rich Swann for the both titles.
this is what I'm saying is outside of AEW and I mean even AEW doesn't mention anything going on Impact.
No, neither does AEW.
Isn't that who I said?
You said AEW.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, when they're ordering my root beer, they did not say a damn thing about Impact. I don't understand it.
But yeah, I mean they okay, I'll get you some food in a couple seconds, all right? They it's just we finally got my dream. I've got wrestling on every single night of the week now. The only problem is two of the shows I don't watch. Three of them, I guess,
Yeah.
if you look at it that way. But hey, we finally have wrestling on every single night of the week.
I'm wondering. I'm actually wondering if Rebellion was last night. Oh no, April 25th. So it's next Sunday.
Okay, so
It's on a Sunday. God, those idiots. Sorry.
well, I mean, you've got this massive pay-per-view coming up where you've got Kenny Omega facing off against their world champion in a champion versus champion winner take all match. and you can't even mention that on AEW TV.
I guess not.
The fact that they still haven't mentioned the fact that the Good Brothers are walking out there without titles. It's Impact is not neither one of the two, either Impact or AEW, are really gaining anything from this crossover story.
No, they're not. You know what? This actually looks like a really good, really strong pay-per-view.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So let me here. I'll run it down real quick here. Just I don't want to spend a lot of time because I got to get going. But
Right, right.
we got the world title match we talked about. Title versus title. Swan versus Omega. We've got Finn Juice versus the Good Brothers for the tag titles. Ace Austin defending the Impact X Division title against Josh Alexander and TJP.
Ooh.
Deanna Purrazzo defending the Knockouts Championship against Tennille Dashwood.
Yeah.
And then you got Sami Callihan versus Trey Miguel in a last man standing match.
Interesting.
And Brian Myers versus Matt Cardona.
Even more interesting.
And Eddie Edwards, Chris Sabin, James Storm, and Willie Mack versus, I'm not sure who Violent by Design is, but that's an 8-man tag that's on the show too.
I
So
kind of am looking forward to seeing the
I
former Major
I I
Brothers.
actually might actually give them some dollars this coming weekend.
And if you do, let me know.
I will.
But to be honest, Sammy versus Trey sounds great. Ace Austin is always great. But the one I'm kind of looking forward to the most is seeing the former Major Brothers against each other.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it?
I- It's I'm
For sure, follow weekly to put together a card like that, and like I said like a month ago, they could the card they put together was terrible, and now they've got this one that just looks great. I'm very
well
impressed. I really am.
Myers versus Cardona. Ever since they broke up, I always wanted to see them face each other. I mean, the last time they were a tag team was when they were the Edgeheads, and then
Right.
they kind of went their separate ways. And I always wanted to see, those two face each other. And I've never got that payoff because they're both so talented and similar that it was an interesting dynamic that I really wanted to see kind of clash in the ring. So the fact that we're finally now getting that, I'm really interested in this pay-per-view.
I might have to watch some Impact this coming week.
I think I'm going to go and watch this week's Impact right now.
All right.
All right.
Anyway, that's all we've got. We'll try to do better next time. This is Shane saying long days, pleasant nights, and Jeff saying
Goodbye.